You know, there was that time in your life where summer vacation seemed to last forever, and it was this magical time. Like, we were all friends, and we're cruising around on skateboards, and we're drinking big gulp pops from the 7-Eleven, and you know, life is just good, man.
By 1984, hardcore had a second generation.
It became a youth scene pretty fast. I was surprised how fast that happened. It was impressive.
And so the bands, I think, started to realize, you know, we need to play all ages shows because a lot of our fan base are kids that are under 19. They're kids in high school and junior high, and the skateboard kids and, you know, the young punks want to see them play.
You're standing there and you're watching the big boys play at the upper deck. You were leaning in, you was part of it. You were like there, and they're encouraging you, especially the big boys. Start your own band, do your own thing, start your own fanzine, write your own comic book, you know? And you were doing it, and you're like, yes, I will. I'll do it.
We would hang out in Uptown Minneapolis. I don't know why, but we just started gravitating towards this neighborhood of Lake Street and Hennepin and the surrounding couple blocks. And there was a McDonald's there, and you could sit outside of the McDonald's.
That was a big place for us to meet, man, because, you know, you don't have a phone. I was south, and my buddies were north from there, and that was where we met.
Just, you know, McDonald's was just something I just was not into anyway. You know, I mean, remember Corporate Death Burger, Ronald McDonald, MDC?
Corporate Death Burger, Ronald McDonald, Corporate Death Burger, Ronald McDonald.
It's a shame it was McDonald's, but it was McDonald's, you know? They had a patio. We all sat there until the cops started chasing us away from there. And the cops were like, you can't be here anymore.
The second wave of Minnesota hardcore were called McPunks and considered a blight.
And there was also the straight edge thing was going on, you know? So there was the kids that drank beer underneath the bridge, and there was the kids that were straight edge, but everybody was cool with each other. It was kind of like everybody was united. We didn't know what we were doing, but we knew that we were doing something, and we knew that adults didn't like it because police would show up for no reason, you know, and they would write articles in the newspaper about punk rockers.
And those kids got in trouble all the time. People were going out of their way to fuck with those kids.
After a while, people would come in from like neighboring suburbs, like they're going to the zoo, to come in and like look at the punk rockers and see people with mohawks and stuff.
It's a clown show, you know? It's like, we get to dress whatever we want, but everybody else was the ones losing their minds, man. I wasn't. I was having a gas.
Are you someone to be afraid of?
No. No, why should anybody be afraid of me? I'm a normal person.
All McDonald's is, it's just a place for people to congregate and be together and be with friends.
So the problem, or perceived problem, of punk rockers will no doubt continue to persist while merchants and passers-by keep a nervous and watchful eye on them. And sooner or later, in the sea of trends, this new wave will probably be replaced by another.
We'd sit on the phone all night and talk about how we needed to start a revolution because Ronald Reagan's coming into office and, you know, it's bad news. And so we're going to start this band, and that was Outcry.
Outcry were looking for positive teen rebellion.
We didn't drink, we didn't smoke dope or anything like that at the time. We were getting off on the straight edge thing and not preaching it, but just like, you know, that's what we were doing. We're just getting high on the music, brother. The thing was, it was never about trying to have a career or make money. We just did it. I mean, it was just fun. You know, it was just like so fun to play. You know, we'd play a show and you'd get $30 at the end of the night for the show. And we would just go make stickers and flyers and stuff like that, or T-shirts with the money. There weren't many adults around, man. The ones that were like 20. that we were doing this without coaches and without adults, and we did it all on our own. And I remember, and I never thought about it at the time until I got a little bit older. I remember thinking, like, this is really amazing that we're actually pulling this off.
Hardcore continued to draw disaffected youth.
I got into punk rock because I'm full of like ADD and dyslexia, and I was disappearing in school, and I was losing it. I didn't have a lot left in me, and I felt I was like, I don't fucking understand these people, and I don't know where I fit in. I need to make a loud noise. That's how I'm gonna be known, and that's how I'm gonna be heard, and that's how I'm not gonna disappear into nothingness, And so I wanted to be really loud. I think everybody was like, you're 2 years late. You're 2 years late. But my bands are fairly popular, man. Skullfuck got to play with. Our first show in a bar was the main room at First Avenue, opening for the Exploited. And that's the fucking band, right? That was the band I wanted to play with. I didn't want to play with, I didn't want to play with the Replacements.
My little brother, Tim, was playing in bands of that second wave and doing the shows and stuff. And it was one of those things where I just kind of always shrugged, seen it, done it.
We were like the next wave of people coming into punk rock, and they didn't want to support us. Nobody was there to fucking help us. Fuck this guy, Tom Hazelmeyer, because I played with his brother. He wouldn't even look at us,
It's a really arrogant attitude, but it was just like, I can't help it. I'm over it. I've done that. It's just like if you spent 2 years painting everything in blue, and then you're over it, you move on, and you come back, and then your brother's going, look, blue. You're just like, so?
And I still love to be punk. And I still love to dress up. And I still love to make a racket, and that's what turned me on, was it got loud.
And then there was another wave of like the little brothers of my friends that started coming up underneath that, like Blind Approach, Toxic Youth, and the Libido Boys from Mankato, who actually had some pretty decent success as a punk band.
But hardcore is still definitely alive, well, and thriving in Minnesota.
The fact that it's still going kind of puzzles me, because it seems to be like you're just kind of doing the same thing that bands were doing 30-something years ago, and you're not doing it any better. I guess you like it. Cool, play your thrash hardcore.
As long as there are bored kids who are pissed off and the availability of cheap guitars and cheap drums, there will always be an intense fuck you kind of music coming from the fringes of punk rock.
And it is a subculture that self-regenerates consistently.
Who am I to say? I'm an old guy now. I liked it for a while, but 35 years ago or.
People don't want that to end. It's like a party. It's like, oh man, the party's done. It was the best party ever.
Hardcore kicked ass and still kicks ass. I'm not always in the mood to listen to that sort of music.
Who I was as a teenager and a punk is core to my being, and it informed me for the rest of my life for who I want to be and how I want to go about my life and how I want to think.
My youngest daughter, I go, hey, you want to hear some of the music I used to play? And I put it on and she started to cry, which I guess is probably the effect I was looking for.
You wonder about youth culture. Is there such a thing anymore? And my kids probably have it, but I don't ask them about it because I figure it's none of my business. You know, I'm their dad, so I shouldn't know about the shit.
The stuff that we railed against in the 80s, those are all unaddressed. I mean, you know, everything we protested against in the 80s has gotten worse. Disaffected young people who are out of touch with what's going on have every reason to get involved in hardcore punk today as they did in 1981. Here at Extreme Noise, we've been operating quietly under the radar, except for an occasional blurb in the city pages. 25 years, most people don't know we're here. Since about 2006, 2007, we have just been scraping by, due just to the enthusiasm of the people who work here. It muddles through day to day, but beyond the occasional 25th anniversary show, don't expect anything big or life-changing out of this group.
I'm not fooling myself for 1 second to think that the 80s and 90s were a pivotal time in culture. I think there's a pivotal time in culture constantly. All right, so we're not quite done yet.
Lots of people want to make a career playing music and make money playing music. You can't do that playing hardcore. It's impossible. It's been tried and it doesn't work. You will work a day job and play in a hardcore band on the side because it's what you like. And you will participate in the subculture and have a great time doing it because it's what you like, but you will never make more than gas money, and that's just the truth. If you're trying to aspire to something more, you will have to play a more commercial kind of music. And if you're gonna do that, just don't bullshit me about it.
Jackets on